we're going to talk some about Hollywood with our right man on the left coast. Tinseltown has remained somewhat or mostly silent on the ongoing crisis in Israel. Some of the biggest, most well-known supporters of Israel really said nothing, despite weighing in on a variety of other topics, political. So the question is Hollywood's silence golden? As I mentioned, joining us now, the right man on the left coast, James Hirsen, author of the Left Coast Report. James, as always, we're so pleased to have you here on America's Forum.
Hey, good morning, JD and Miranda. How are you?
We're doing well, and yourself?
Fantastic.
Well, give us the lowdown on this. Why has Hollywood remained silent for the most part on this issue?
No, it's really baffling, especially when you talk about the most prominent supporters of Israel, perhaps, at least financially. People like Steven Spielberg and Jeffrey Katzenberg and David Geffen, completely, utterly silent. And not that they're not speaking out on other things. Barbara Streisand issues statements constantly on political items. She spoke out on the death of Maya Angelou. Jane Fonda just did interviews expressing concern about Rupert Murdoch taking over Hollywood. So they're talking about all the other subjects, but they won't discuss this, except a few have come out in favor of the Palestinians. I mean, we've had these weird. There was a letter signed by Penelope Cruz and her husband, Javier Bardem, and it called what Israel's doing genocide. Then she backtracked, said, well, I don't really know anything about the Mideast. We had Selena Gomez tweeting against Israel and then deleting the tweet. So other than a few people, Bill Maher, Joan Rivers, and Howard Stern, other than those three, it seems that celebrities are staying away from it. And the Hollywood Reporter had a headline that said, you could talk about anything in Hollywood except Gaza.
Well, James, you mentioned Joan Rivers. Let's listen to what the Star recently had to say.
If New Jersey were firing rockets into New York, we would wipe them out. I am so bored. If we heard they were digging tunnels from New Jersey to New York, we would get rid of Jersey. So I don't want to hear anymore, oh, we'll do a partial truce. The Palestinians, you cannot throw rockets and expect people not to defend themselves.
Okay, Joan's saying that, but she was referring to the Palestinians. This is Hamas. Do you think that's why some people are being silent about this? Or do you think just because this has been ongoing for decades?
Well, I think it's been ongoing for decades, but you know, the reporting is so utterly biased and leaves out some very key elements of the story. And that's one
like
of the things.
What? Like what?
Well, the main key element is the compassion that comes out of the Hollywood left is for the civilian casualties in Gaza. But what's left out of the story is that those civilian casualties, in great part, are caused, but not by Israel, but by Hamas forcing people to be human targets, human shields, in order to use those casualties as a weapon, and very effectively. And so, consequently, many uninformed celebrities who only get their news from places like CNN come out with the idea that Israel's the bad guy in this. They started it all. And what Joan Rivers is doing, which is going against the grain, is pointing out that people who live in Israel can't live in peace because they're constantly hearing air raid sirens, and those rockets are being fired from Gaza, and that the country has no choice but to defend itself. As a matter of fact, during this recent ceasefire, already there have been at least 6 rockets fired during the ceasefire. So the reporting has been strange. And so for Bill Maher and Joan Rivers and even Howard Stern to do that is kind of an act of courage, because it's clear that even the courageous Steven Spielberg, who runs the Shoah Foundation, which is against anti-Semitism, seems to be afraid to speak out. He's an Israel supporter, but he won't speak out on behalf of that nation.
But James, do you think that was a fair comparison that Joan Rivers used, talking about the tunnels from New York to New Jersey, to use Israel, to compare the two?
Well, I think if you look at the overall context, to compare in other words, what she was saying is if the people of New York were living like the people of Tel Aviv with air raid sirens, where people were shooting rockets, they would demand action, and they would want military action to destroy the source of those rockets. I think that was very fair. And so, and especially in light of the fact that she stopped on the street, and she also is a celebrity. So yeah, I think it was fair.
Well, Joan has had some challenges, to say the least, with comments about the Clintons and others. At any rate, we'll have to leave it there. James Hirsen, as always, we appreciate your right thinking from the left coast.
Well, thank you very much. You have a wonderful weekend.
You too, James. Thanks so much. Well, we are going to move along now and talk about an epic moment in American history. Historians look back, and a book was written that called it The Longest Day. Instead, we know it really as June 6, 1944, D-Day. That is the subject of this American moment.
By mid-1944, German military occupation engulfed the continent of Europe, while across the English Channel, an armada of men and equipment was preparing to take it back. On the 5th of June, Allied armies from the United States, Great Britain, and Canada joined those from Australia, Belgium, Czechoslovakia, France, Greece, New Zealand, Norway, Poland, and the Netherlands, and set sail for the Normandy coast. But they weren't all soldiers. At morning's first light, London bureau chief for the future NBC radio network, George Hicks, broadcasting live from the deck of an American ship, provided Americans back home with a front row seat. Supreme Allied Commander General Dwight D. Eisenhower also used that same venue, radio, to inspire both his troops and the nations they were being sent to set free.
The tide has turned. The free men of the world are marching together to victory.